Hey everyone, so I want to welcome you to Q&A number 2 here in the Project Management Blueprint Facebook group. Today's Q&A will be on communication, which seems to be a hot button issue for a lot of real estate investors dealing with their contractors. So we've had 3 group members ask questions related to communication with their contractors. And Victoria asks, how do I make sure that my contractor regularly updates me on progress, problems, delays, etc.? Patrick asks, how do you deal with a contractor that won't communicate well after starting on your project? And Kayla asks, how often should I expect follow-up from my contractor? So these are all very, very good questions, very important questions. And it starts with what I refer to as the 8 pillars of project management. Those 8 pillars are: number 1, scope; number 2, time; number 3, cost; number 4, quality; number 5, resources, which is labor; number 6 is procurement, the purchasing of materials; number 7 is risk; and finally we have number 8, communication. So these are the 8 pillars of project management. They are the foundation of everything that has to go into a successful project. And the reason that they're foundation and required for a successful project is that 80% of a project should be spent on planning, and 20% of that project should actually be spent on the execution. And by spent, I mean your time specifically spent. I cannot stress the importance of planning enough. And here's a reference from Benjamin Franklin. You may have heard this quote before. Benjamin Franklin says, by failing to plan, you are planning to fail. And a renovation project is no different. You have to plan. And that is the importance that I'm trying to stress to real estate investors who want to have a better experience with their contractor, save time, save money, reduce their stress, frustration, overwhelm, and the need to micromanage as well. So all the work gets done up front, and that includes communication. So I'm sure you're well aware, but if you're not, renovations are a team sport. They're not just handing off the work to your contractor and saying, here you go, thank you very much, deliver me a finished project. I wish it was that simple, but unfortunately, in reality, it's not. And I can say that confidently after having spent 7 years in the commercial construction industry, working my way up from knowing nothing all the way up to the title and responsibility that comes with being a project manager working on projects of up to $20 million. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what the value of the project is, because the process and the planning and the work that goes into it is exactly the same. That project could be $5,000. It could be $100,000. It could be, like I said, $20 million. But you have to plan. If you do not plan in the right way and put in the work and the time and the effort that it takes up front, you are setting yourself up for problems and challenges. Now, renovations are a team sport. So it's not just you, but also it comes to your contractor. And we're going back now to the topic of communications. So in any team-based setting, communication, good communication specifically, is the key to achieving a winning result. And when communication breaks down, it affects everyone on the team's performance. It's the same in sports. When the team stops listening to the message of the coach, their performance starts to decline. When someone steps up in the locker room and says, we need to have a team meeting, heart to heart, get things back on track, then it elevates everyone's performance often, not always. So anyways, I understand that the poor communication by your contractor is a frustrating experience for you. Things like lack of communication on progress updates, not attending pre-planned meetings or delaying them, long wait times to hear back for questions or concerns that you have as you reach out. And on that note, it's very important that you understand upfront the different types of contractors that you're going to be dealing with as you go from project to project. So no two projects are exactly the same. No two people are exactly the same. No two contractors are exactly the same. no two properties are exactly the same, so on and so on. So you have to be honed into who you're going to be working with, who you want to be working with, as well as you need to understand what your own expectations are, and make sure that when you're evaluating contractors, that you ask the right questions. So starting off with, for anyone here in the group, I hope that you've read some of the Working with Contractors playbook that I uploaded to the group here, because that will give you a good sense of the three major types of contractors that you're likely to encounter. You first have the business, then you have the owner operator, and then you have the specialist. And how each of these contractors is accessible to you as far as communication is concerned will be different. So I'm not going to get too specific on each one of these, because you can go and you can read the first 3.5 chapters of the Working with Contractors playbook. Specifically, chapter 1 will give you a good sense, and a bit chapter 2 will give you a good sense, and a bit on chapter 3 as well. Give you kind of a brief overview of each of these types of contractors. But the business is more well established. They have systems and processes. They have multiple team members, so their capacity is spread out. It's not one guy and a truck, or two guys in a truck, which is more such as the owner operator. They have more time available because they have different parts of their team. They have the group that works on site. They have the group that works in the office, the project manager who oversees the team on site, schedules orders, and does all of the coordination kind of work, right? This varies significantly from the owner operator, who is likely the one that's working in the field and doing the actual work on your project. And if they have multiple projects going on, multiple crews at the same time, they're going to be bouncing around from job site to job site, swinging the hammer, installing the finishes, what have you. So their time is going to be spent doing those types of things, and less so on making sure that they're communicating properly to you. The other type here is this, the last one is the specialist, which is the smallest of all three. And this is more like the individual with a helper who focuses on one key element of your project. Could be a tile installer, could be a cabinet installer, could be a painter, those types of things. They're bouncing around from job to job to job to job, similar to the owner operator. They might not have the capacity to communicate with you as well as you would like. So in saying that, you have to be cognizant of who or which kinds of these contractors you're dealing with, and then that will help to better establish your expectations on what you can expect as far as a level of service and communication specifically to receive. But in saying that, so there's 3 phases of construction. There's the pre-construction, there's the construction, and then there's the post-construction. So going back to Q&A number 1, where Daria asks about qualifying contractors for your project prior to hiring them. You want to start off with all of your planning, or all of your planning starts off in the pre-construction part. And there's a few things you can do to sort of weed out and figure out what you're likely to get when the construction actually starts with a particular contractor, by asking the right questions. So that you can do that in a couple of different ways. So the first one is pre-qualification. In the pre-qualification, you're finding different contractors from a variety of different sources. I have 7 different sources that I use, which will be part of the course that I begin delivering on April 8th. And one of those is referrals. Referrals is very common amongst the real estate community, asking for referrals from your network, from your power team, from other contractors. And you definitely want to be asking any of the referrers that you receive recommendations for contractors from about communication specifically. You want to know, how was their communication? Did they keep them updated? Further to that, when you're actually getting to the qualification process and you're speaking to contractors directly, you want to know how, or you want to ask, um, how do you keep clients? You want to ask the contractor this: how do you keep your clients updated on progress? How often do you keep them updated on progress? What medium do you use to keep them updated on progress? Is it text message? Is it emails? Is it phone calls? Is it frequent site visits? What do you typically ask of your clients, or what do you provide your clients? What does that look like? Paint the picture for me is basically what you want to know, right? So that's number one. Number two, you want to know, how do they handle change orders, as far as communicating them to you? How do they communicate problems? How do they communicate issues and challenges when they arise on site? And this is a very open-ended discussion, and a mutual discussion between the both of you. And you need to be able to communicate up front what your expectations are as far as communication in this regard, because you don't want to be surprised at the end of the project with a stack of change orders that your contractor hands you. Obviously, no one does. So you definitely want to work out those details and be on the same page ahead of time. Really, it's all about setting expectations up front. And by doing the planning, you will be able to set those expectations. And from setting those expectations, you will have a baseline for what you expect to happen as the project, the work gets underway. That's why planning is so important. But further to that, it's not just what the contractor tells you, it also matters what your preferred method of communication is, how often you want to be contacted, and the reasons why. So how available are you going to be able to make yourself based on what you're doing throughout the day? If you have a full-time job that you're at and you're in meetings, can you take calls during the day? Do you need to set a time early in the morning, at lunch, or in the evening, where you can receive calls from your contractor, or let them know that that's when you'll be available to communicate with them? So at least there's an understanding. Number two is your proximity to your project. For real estate investors that are working on projects or have projects on the go in distant towns or cities or even countries, you're obviously not close enough to be able to go and visit the work itself. So you need to establish a baseline of how you're going to communicate with that contractor. Is it going to be, again, text message, telephone, FaceTime, or video conferencing? Are you going to find photos and videos or 360 camera virtual tours a sufficient form of being updated on the progress from week to week on the job site? And that kind of also goes into how often do you want to be communicated with? Is it every other day, every week, every other week, as infrequently as possible, based on your availability? And further to that, how we need to understand, or you will understand through the qualification process, when you're speaking to a number of different contractors, and going back to which type of contractor type they fall into. Is it the business? Is it the owner operator? Is it the specialist? That will dictate, give you a good sense on your confidence level on that contractor's ability to actually perform the work. That's why the pre-qualification and the qualification process as a whole of the planning is so crucial. So we covered kind of what to do in the pre-qualification, what kind of questions you want to ask specifically of the source of the referral. Now you have a basis for what you want to ask a contractor during the qualification stage. And I will be including this as part of the overall course, as well as the checklist that will accompany the course. So you'll have something to lean on when you're going through this step by step. So that's kind of the pre-construction part of it. Now you've gotten, and I've taken you to the point where you're qualifying contractors. When you are at the stage where you've gotten in quotes and you're evaluating all of them and you've chosen your preferred contractor. You've let them know, hey, I want to hire you for this project, and you're at the contract stage, which you should always have a contract in place. I don't care what the project's worth. So there should be something documented saying this is how much it's going to cost. Here's the project. Here's the kind of work, and other things like that. But you can write in the contract the communication plan, specifically progress updates, how often they're going to take place, when they're going to take place, what day and time they're going to take place, how they're going to take place, whether it's phone call, video conference, in person, and write that into the contract, because then that sets a precedence that you can always go back to when you or the contractor doesn't make it happen, doesn't follow through on it, right? It's written in the contract, it's legal binding, and that works both ways. The same can be said for change orders. That could be definitely written in the contract as far as what happens when a change order is required. So here's a scenario: the contractor that you've hired to build a legal basement apartment or renovate the main floor of a single family home, and they start removing drywall and they encounter a structural problem. That's something that should be discussed right away. But here's the thing: you don't want your contractor to communicate just a problem to you. You want them to approach you with the solution as well. So you definitely want to set the precedence before the actual construction portion of your project takes place. When you do all this upfront work in the pre-construction, through the pre-qualification, you've learned how that contractor communicated with the source of the referral, right? With the person who gave you that contact. You've asked the contractor directly if or how they communicate with their customers in a variety of different situations, including change orders, right? You've communicated how you want to be communicated with and how frequently you want to be updated and on what you want to be updated with, as far as when something occurs on the job site, as far as an issue or a challenge. You want to be communicated about any extra costs, what the reason for those extra costs are, and then you want to communicate with what frequency you want to be updated on the project's overall progress. And so going to the construction portion, progress updates specifically. So you can write this into your contract, as I mentioned earlier. But what do you want to discuss as part of a progress update, right? Or how do you want your contractor to communicate information to you? Because it doesn't know, you can definitely go to the job site or see photos or videos of the actual work that's taking place. But that doesn't really tell you if the work is on schedule or not, right? You need to know what the end date is, and you need to reverse engineer it back from there. Rather, your contractor should be reverse engineering it from there, and then coming up a game plan with specific milestones that they need to hit by certain dates. And these are really the things that you want to be discussing during progress updates. Now, I can answer an entire question for 2 hours on the things to talk about during progress meetings, but I'll leave that out from here. I guess in closing, I would say that we are all, including myself, guilty at times of avoiding the difficult discussions, and it'll happen for many reasons. We don't want to be the bearer of bad news. We don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. We don't want to let them down. We don't want to appear or do anything that would make us look bad or hurt our egos. So we just keep it to ourselves. But But to ensure better communication with your contractor, start by implementing these simple things in the pre-construction planning that you're doing as far as the pre-qualification and qualification process, and at the contract stage before signing it. And that will help improve the experience and communication that you're having with your contractor when the work is actually taking place. How there's certain times, obviously, where people will backtrack, they won't honor their commitments. And at that point, I would say that you need to call a timeout with your contractor and have a discussion about what you're not liking, be vocal about it, and get their feedback. They may disagree, they may see it differently, but at the end of the day, you're the one that's making the monetary investment in them and the property that you're working on. So, you need to have a certain level of authority when you're talking and challenge them on what they're saying back to you based on, reasonably challenge them based on the expectations that you both agreed on at the very start of the project before the construction began, and then get their feedback. Maybe they have something going on in their personal life or dealing with another employee, like one of their employees who's not working out. Bills that are piling up. You have no idea what's going on in someone's personal life, especially if they started off doing it and then they sort of phased out, or that communication dwindled over time. It could be just a mutual misunderstanding between you two on a previous discussion that took place, or a whole host of different reasons where communication could drop off over time during the project. But it's your job as the project champion, as you can see here, why I've said that. You're the champion of your project. It is your project. You are responsible for it. You have to take the wins and the losses. You have to be the leader of everyone that's on your team, including your contractor. You have to take ownership and responsibility for when things go off track. I know it's frustrating because you're paying someone to do the work for you as far as delivering you a finished construction project, but nonetheless, it's no different for a manager and an employee at any company. The manager or the employee is oftentimes a reflection of the manager and leadership of that company. Good leadership will make that employee a better employee. Not always, but often or not, if the employee is there and most importantly, they're there with the right attitude, then the accountability and responsibility for something going off the rails has to fall onto the leader and the manager. Always. Something that I've learned through coaching, and this is within the last 3 to 6 months, which I had never heard or learned about before, is the 4 different behavioral and personality behavioral/personality and communication styles that every single one of us has, and that is based on the DISC assessment. DISC is an acronym for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And we each have all of these behavioral, personality, and communication traits within us, but some are stronger than others. Contractors tend to lean towards the dominance side of things. So the D in the DIS and C, they tend to lean higher. And that's part of the reason that they're business owners. They don't like to be told what to do. They want to be in control of their work, of their lives, of their time, things like that. But as far as communication is concerned, they're very straight and to the point. They are very results driven, task oriented. They don't beat around the bush, right? They want to get straight to the punchline as far as, okay, let's make a decision, let's move on, let's get it done so I can move on to the next thing. The next one is influence, and many contractors who are good at communicating and are good at sales will rank higher in the influence category, as well as the dominance category. And the influence is the very outspoken, chatty, talkative types of individuals. They're going to ask you how you are, how your family is, how your neighbors are, things like that. So they're gonna be very bubbly, very talkative with you. So as far as communicating with them, that's not an issue. It's just what information are they actually communicating, and is it important to your project? Now the steadiness, I would say some contractors may fall into this, which is more of a caring and understanding, and they're very good listeners. I wouldn't say too many contractors fall into this specific category. And then finally, conscientious, which is my second highest score after dominance, are for the individuals who are more analytical. They're the traditional introverts. They don't like engaging in conversation in the traditional sense. They're very technical minded. They prefer communicating over email and text message. That's probably the best way to get a hold of them rather than phone calls. And so when you look at all of these 4 different traits, again, we all have a bit of everything, but there are probably 1 or 2 that we score much higher in than the others. And there's benefits and there's challenges as far as communication with each of these. So you really have to understand, and you can do more research yourself on this, as to the contractor's DISC assessment. And this is not something that you'll learn overnight, but just the fact that you're more aware after doing a bit of research and you're hearing me talk on the subject, and it's an actual thing, again, which I didn't know 3 to 6 months ago. You'll be able to tailor, as the leader and manager, being your project champion, how to communicate with everyone, every contractor that you're dealing with. You'll be able to pick up on little cues of how they respond to questions, how they communicate information, the way that they're updating you on progress, change orders, problems, issues that arise, asking you about this or about that as far as material selection, about scope of work. And your job as the leader and manager is to really hone in on that and focus in on how you're relaying the information to the contractor and how that information is being received by you, and then adjusting to better align with theirs. And in doing so, you'll build more rapport with the other person, with that being the contractor. You'll reduce your own frustrations, and hopefully you'll avoid misunderstandings. Finally, so you can adjust the different methods of communication based on this to being email, phone calls, in-person meetings, and then take it a step further and really discuss under what circumstances should require any one of those forms of communication. This is outside of like regularly scheduled progress updates, obviously. But you definitely want to have this discussion in advance of hiring any contractor, so that you both have the expectations going into the start of construction as to how you're going to be communicating with each other, how frequently, how often, what method of communication you're both going to use, under what circumstances that method of communication is going to be used. And again, that's going to be based on your proximity, your availability, and your level of confidence in their ability to perform the work. So in closing, that's a ton of information for you. As I said, some of this will be covered more in the course, but it's important to understand the amount of work that needs to go into, or the importance that needs to be placed as far as time, energy, and commitment by you as the leader and manager, being the project champion during the pre-construction process, before the construction work actually happens. And when you set the expectation and you set the bar going into the project, that will translate to a much smoother project, as definitely as far as communication covered in this Q&A today. But going one step further, doing that for scope, time, cost, quality, resources, procurement, risk as well. So I hope that answered your questions, Victoria, Patrick, and Kayla, and I look forward to getting your feedback in the comments below. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening if you made it all the way through. Take care.